Welcome to the Fish House Nation podcast alongside Al Escobedo. I'm Chris Larson. We're going to talk something a little bit different today. We've been talking a lot about wheelhouse fishing and strategies for that and different strategies. But today what we're going to do is kind of do more of a ice fishing beginner type of show and something for people who are just getting started in ice fishing and are just like, hey, I don't ice fish. I don't really know anybody. What do I do? And I think the first tip that you would give is find somebody who does to take under your wing. But this is going to be kind of a beginner-focused episode, and tell me about that, Al. How does somebody? I think you're right. Probably the best thing to do is to get under the wing of someone. But how do you do that?
You know, in the neck of the woods where we're from, northern Wisconsin, right on the border of Minnesota, most everywhere, you don't have to look far to find someone that ice fishes. With the day of social media, there's the groups out there. Go on the groups. I know it's tough. There's a lot of people out there that aren't on the groups for the right reasons. So when you ask questions, it can be pretty difficult. Mm-hmm. If someone responds to those questions and is giving you sincere, good answers, don't hesitate to maybe DM them to get away from some of those hateful comments and stuff like that. The other thing you can always do is if you really just can't find anyone, you're not clicking with someone that wants to share the information, lean on the experts at your local pro shops, your Thorne Brothers, your local bait shops, the smaller places. You can get into some good helpers at your Cabela's and stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with leaning on those guys too, but showing some love to them smaller shops. I really pride myself and really try to give those guys the love because they're out there really working hard at it, and it's a passion for them, and they tend to be very knowledgeable, especially in that specific region or area that you're going to be starting to learn. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those guys, you know, it's their business, it's their livelihood. They're not there, you know, as a small business owner just to make $1 million and get rich. They're there because it's a passion of theirs. They're willing to learn and they're willing to teach. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge thing. Like I said, if you can't find someone that's willing to help you, that's a great place to start, is finding a shop like your Thorne Brothers or your Blue Ribbon Tack. Guys that are willing to answer the questions is a great place to start. And then from there, it's just going to be kind of narrowing down what you need to get going. This podcast is really going to be kind of a guideline of things to start with and then go from there. With that being said, some of these pointers we have and that we've kind of talked about would be best to find that person that can help you, to lean on them. You know, first thing I would recommend is going to be the apparel. Not everyone's going to be able to jump out there and go and buy an ice armor suit or an Eskimo suit or anything like that. Just make sure you have something warm that's going to protect you from moisture, the wind. Hopefully, you know, you have the opportunity, if you can afford the really nice clothes, to have some sort of house that you're in that you can get out of the wind elements, turn on a heater. But focus on the clothing and focus on footwear. Footwear is very, very important because your feet are always in contact with the frozen ice that you're walking on. So if you have a cheap boot, something that's not insulated down towards the bottom, down towards the ice, that cold is going to come up pretty quickly. If you can't afford a really, really good boot and you really want to get out there are other things you can do. You know, go to Menards and buy one of those foam puzzle pieces. Buy stuff like that, set it underneath your feet. There's ways to get around it if you're not looking to spend a ton of money.
Yeah, I would say that's something like my son, I buy really nice boots for him. His feet are cold in 10 minutes, no matter what. But like that foam piece to just go underneath your feet, or even if you have something, maybe your wife does some gardening and she just has like something to, you know, like a knee pad or something. Some sort of pad or an old piece of carpet if you're really like strapped, you know, just something to give you some space between your feet and the ice will make a humongous difference. But yeah, that foam puzzle piece, when I put that under my son's feet, you know, it helps a lot. I mean, I'm already dead inside. My feet almost never get cold, but for those of you who are actually still, you know, with real blood running through you, yeah, staying warm in the feet is the big thing.
That's the biggest, you know, that's the quickest way you're going to go. And that would be, with the boots, I would obviously say waterproof is probably if you're starting and not looking to spend a lot of money, I would say waterproof over insulation if that becomes an issue, because wet boots are going to become frozen cold boots, so just keep that in mind. I know that ice fishing is a great sport because you don't have to have $1 million to jump into it. You can jump into it very reasonably with whatever you have. So if you're looking to get into it, just ask. That's where you can start leaning on, whoever's helping you. Say, I go into a store and say, hey, I have $100. I want to buy a decent pair of boots for ice fishing. Have them point you in the right direction to get you that best boot that you can get for the money that you have.
Yeah.
That would be my recommendation as far as clothing and footwear goes.
And I'm with you kind of on the waterproof end. Let's get some really nice wool socks, put on some decent shoes even, and get some mudders if you have to, because just like you say, if you've got mudders and good socks and something decent between them, you're going to be halfway there already.
Yep.
It's obviously not as good as having great boots, but that'll get you halfway there. The other thing I would say as far as the float suit goes, Eskimo's got some really, really inexpensive stuff now that has flotation in it. And I would definitely look at that. But if you can't even go that route and you're going to go fishing somewhere, I would say when you're walking out, put a life jacket on over the top of over the top. Like if you're just going to walk out in your car or whatever, just strap a life jacket to you. So if you do have an issue, you're going to pop back up, and that's more insulation too. It'll keep you a little warm.
Yep, exactly.
But it'll keep you safe if that's what you have to do. I just remember as a kid, this was the late 80s, going out and ice fishing and just miserable cold, and it just wasn't fun. And I remember when you and I first started working together and you're like, you want to go ice fishing? I'm like, no. I don't have any interest in going ice fishing because it just doesn't sound fun. But now with the gear that we have, and like you say, you can do it very expensively, but you can also do it very inexpensively and get started without a huge layout of cash. Everything costs money. Well, I'm not going to say anything's free. Everything costs money. If you're willing to, I always hear, being rich means you can be stupid. Things like, you can go get a gas auger now used on Marketplace probably for $50, but you might have to know how to work on an engine. I'm not smart enough to do that, so I got to have enough money to buy an electric auger. But if you're someone who's handy, like you can afford to go and buy some more inexpensive gear. Hand augers are out there too. Just remember, hand augers, in mid-January in Minnesota, generally not very fun because you're drilling through 20 inches of ice. But, maybe that's where if you need to spend $50 on a gas auger or a used one somewhere, you can do that. Again, if you've got, the other option would be maybe you're a guy that does some construction work, you got a nice drill, you can go out and get yourself a pistol bit and, buy them at somewhere on sale and get a heck of a deal on it and get you going that way too. That's an option as well. Let's talk about rods. Where to start there?
This is when you start getting into the actual tackle and fishing gear that you're going to need. This is where I would say having someone to lean on would be the biggest thing, because it's so specific. There's so many different options, and it depends on how specific and how targeted you want to be as to what you're going to chase after. That will make a huge difference. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're just someone who's looking to go out there and just catch fish, and you don't care what they are, what they look like, I would say, it becomes a little bit easier. Just get yourself a decent quality, something that feels nice in your hand. That's not, I wouldn't say super cheap, because nowadays you can buy a decent ice fishing rod for $20 with a reel on it that's going to work and do whatever you need it to do, and then get some decent line, couple of jigs, couple of hooks, some live bait, and go give it a try. It's pretty simple, but if you really want to dive in and get into it deep, it all comes back to how much you want to put into it and how deep you want to learn, and what level you want to get into it. Everyone, you might just be someone, I want to just try ice fishing one time. If I catch one fish, I'm totally happy. Or you might be one of those guys that are like, you know what, if I'm going to try this, I want to learn how to do it right and jump in full steam. So that's a big thing to think about. But like I said, I mean, when you're out buying this equipment, and even if you are looking to save, I can tell you, you know, if I'm going to sell an ice fishing rod on Facebook Marketplace, if the guy shows up at my house and says, oh yeah, I really like this rod, and you know, I'm gonna go catch crappies with it, and I've never really ice fished before, I'm gonna answer all the questions he has, and we'll sit and talk about it. So don't be hesitant. No matter what you're buying, just strike up the conversation with people. Whether, you know, I'm looking for my ice house today. I'm buying this $50 flip over ice house from Chris. I'm gonna say, oh man, this is my first ice house. I'm super excited. I've never really ice fished before. You got any pointers for me? Anything you can, you know, just doing that over and over again, you're gonna learn quite a bit. Just taking those little tidbits and just asking the right questions and making sure you're getting, you know, guided down the right path.
Yeah. And I would say, you know, when you talked about a little bit earlier going to bait shops, but like when you go to those places or you go to shows, I mean, I think St. Paul can be really good, but it can also be madness in there. Yeah. And a lot of times people don't have time to spend an hour with you. So maybe, you know, going and visiting them, you know, in mid-December is better than walking in like at first ice, because at first ice typically, you know, it can be kind of madness. So, yeah, you know, go into a store at a time where there's not a lot of cars in the parking lot.
Start now.
Yeah, now is a great time.
July, June, August. Just because it's not ice season doesn't mean you can't start making lists and preparing. Watch those videos. Watch as much YouTube as you can. Reach out to the experts on the social platforms and see what they're willing to offer up as far as information. Yeah,
the other thing that I see a lot, and I'd love to hear your advice on this, is line. And like, I'll see some stuff once in a while in Ice Fishing Minnesota, which is another good place. There is some crazy stuff on there, but like if you just want to get some baseline information, it's a great place to go. There's lots of stuff being shared there. But what I will say is, like, I see it all the time, guys like, I've been trying to catch bluegills and I just can't catch them. And they're like, well, what line? That guy went out and put the same 8-pound test I used in the summer on there. Talk about line and kind of what you would recommend for people. Well,
this is going to be something where that's going to be something that you would lean on whoever's getting you started. But as everyone has their own personal feelings on what pound test and what to use, because I fish tournaments and I've been fortunate to fish with some pretty good partners, and it's interesting because you fish with all these different guys that are some of the best in the ice belt, and they're all using different stuff. Mm-hmm. But just to kind of keep it basic, if you're targeting panfish, crappies, perch, bluegills, I like to keep it 3 pounds, 4 pounds or less. If you're really focused on something like that, mono or fluorocarbon. If you're really just getting started, it's not going to make a big difference to you. Mm-hmm. As you're kind of learning and growing, there's different instances, different uses. Your mono line floats, your fluoro sinks, so it can help with bite detection. It can help with different situations.
Stretch.
So you can really break it down. But if we're talking just the real basics, I would say starting with a mono at that lower poundage for panfish, you start getting into walleyes. Personal preference that. Again, pretty much everything I do, I size down. My panfish rods are all going to be 1 or 2 pounds test. Mm-hmm. My walleye rods are all 4 pound test, where most guys are going to be using 6 pounds. 6 to 8 is usually the more common. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm going to say that in most cases, I would recommend ice fishing. You're going to use a mono or fluorocarbon. I would not recommend a braid. Braid can be used if you're fishing in a hard side house, that's got good, plenty heat, but once you get outside, it freezes fast. It's just not a real fun material to work with. So when you're just getting started, assuming you don't have a nice hard house that you're gonna be fishing in, you're gonna be looking at mono or fluorocarbon. Being that you're new with it, it's really not gonna make a difference to you as to learning. The difference of the bite. You could set up 2 different rods and kind of feel and learn that way, but I would just say start with, if you're just getting started, just pick one of the 2 based on the species and go from there. And then again, going to the guy, there's a lot of times you bring someone out and they're like, I don't care what I catch, I've never ice fished, I just want to catch fish. I would say throw on a 4-pound test, mono. That'll cover your bases for most everything, and then you got 1 rod to kind of be your catch-all, if you will.
I like mono for beginners just because most of the time I'm taking kids out, and if they get a bite, it's, you know, and it with fluoro, with no stretch in there, they'll just yank it right out of their mouth. So that mono kind of, there's some stretch in there, gives them, it's not gonna be pulled out of the fish's mouth as easily. So that's just something to think about as well. The other thing that we should talk about before we wrap up is just safety. And again, we talked about a float suit or a life jacket, but you know, I think Eskimo has what they call an economy spud bar. It's about $30. Just having a spud bar, especially if you're going to fish early in the season, just to get yourself out on the ice. The other thing, especially if we're talking about wearing more inexpensive footwear, is just having some cleats to put on your boots, so you're not sliding around. That, I mean, that can be a problem in January. I mean, that can be a problem anywhere. It just gives you some more grip. So I would say definitely have some cleats to put on those boots. Just make sure that you can do that. We didn't talk about. Did we talk about electronics?
Let's hold off on that for a second. Let's stay on the safety. Make sure you get a set of picks.
Oh, yeah.
And you always want to make sure you have a rope with you. Inexpensive, just grab any old chunk of rope, throw it in the sled, bring it with you. It's another great tool to have with you. Just a couple other additional items to make sure you have for safety. And then the other thing I want to touch on with that spud bar, make sure you're using it early in the ice, but I would also, being that we're gearing this towards new guys, I would always bring a tape measure with you as well to get yourself familiar. I've been spud barring out on lakes ever since I can remember, so I kind of have a system and I kind of have a feel for my hits and what I do. A lot of guys want to just hit it as hard as they can, use the weight of it so you can be consistent. Take that tape measure and measure a few times. Do it right next to shore so you can see, okay, my 2 hits shows me 3 inches of ice. So you have an idea, because everyone does hit a little bit different. If you're not using the weight like you're supposed to, you might be knocking through 4 inches of ice with 2 hits or whatever. You just want to be familiar with the conditions and know what you're actually walking on. Just because you see a guy walking out there and going 1, 2, shuffling out 1, 2, he might be only on, you don't know. You know, I always check it for yourself and familiarize yourself with that piece of equipment. It's overlooked. A lot of people will grab those spud bars and just go, but a lot of them don't even know what the measurements or what they're really dealing with. They just assume I hit it twice, so I'm good to walk on it. But
the other thing you brought up, tape measure, that made me remember this is a regulations book. A lot of times we go on places and we're like, oh, I'll just look it up when we get out there, and you get out there and you don't have cell phone signal. Or we go, well, the state limit for this is 25, but they're on a special lake that has a 5 fish limit. And just being able to look at that when you're out there is pretty important. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've been cited a couple times, and it was just one of those things where it's like, well, I thought it was this, but I was wrong. And there's nothing worse than having that feeling where it's like, I feel like I did everything right and I know what this is, but I didn't know about this one little special thing. And it's like, it makes your heart sink when those things happen, because you don't go out there trying to break the law, but it's just like, well, I messed up and I just didn't look and realize that there was special regulations here, and things happen, and having that happen is just, it feels horrible, and you don't want to go through that. So I would say definitely have that with you as well. But let's talk about electronics. And this has become a world in which everybody wants the latest and greatest things out there, and the latest and greatest things have now become, it was 10 years ago, you could probably have the nicest piece of ice electronics out there, and it was like $700, and now it's like $6,000. So as a beginner, I think a lot of times beginners look at that and go, I can't even think about starting to do this because I can't afford that. So what should I do? And, I would say a flasher is probably going to be your entry point for most people getting started. And maybe you kind of work your way up. And if you realize, hey, this is something I'm really passionate about, I really like doing this, the family really likes doing it, then maybe you kind of move your way up in the food chain. A lot of people will say, go buy a used unit. And I would tend to kind of move people away from that. I mean, if it's somebody I know and you're like, oh yeah, this thing works great, I'll take you out, you can use it, and then I'll buy it. That's one thing. But I've just seen what a lot of people do when they try to dump stuff off on people, and it's not a good situation. And I think if you're a savvy buyer and you're looking at shows and you're looking at sale prices when retailers have stuff on sale, like, I think you can buy a lot of brand new stuff for the same price as a lot of stuff you see out there used. So I would say, look at entry level flashers. I really like the Markham M1 because it's got that bottom zoom, which is something that you usually see kind of on mid-tier things, but it's priced right, and especially if you can find one on a sale, like, that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. When you're dealing with electronics, there's so many things that can be wrong that you really won't know about until you get it out on the water. And even then, stuff wears out. They got brushes, some of them. I mean, there's things that wear out. So when you're buying used, you really don't necessarily know what you have as far as how long it's gonna last. And that's, in my mind, the bright side of the newest, latest, and greatest going out of this world price-wise. It's kind of opened the price point for the lower end. What we were using as a standard operating system 5 years ago is now what was $600-700 you can buy for $200-400 nowadays. So that opens that opportunity and makes it a little easier to jump into that flasher. And to be honest, I have forward facing sonar. I almost never actually fish under it. I almost always fish under a flasher. So, and then even then, if you can't swing a flasher, there are cheaper camera options out there that can get you started for electronics as well. Any tool to get you started with what you can afford is great. Obviously, if you can swing for the fences and get some of the better things, a flasher would be my first choice over a camera, but
yeah, for sure.
Get what you can get. The camera is another great option, another great tool that I would add to the arsenal.
Yeah, one thing I'll say about cameras, even if you can buy like the best camera out there, if it's dark water, it's not going to work very well.
That is true.
If it's dark outside, it's not going to work. I mean, I know that there are cameras out there that have lights on them, and what I'll tell you is those lights are really nice kind of as the day is ending and you just need an extra 10 minutes of fishing. But if you drop it down at 10 o'clock at night and turn the light on, it's going to look like driving through a snowstorm. You're just not going to see anything. So if it's choice between one or the other, I would say definitely go the flasher because it's going to give you a signal no matter what.
Yep.
But if you know you're going to fish on a lake that's clear water and you're only going to fish in the daytime, then maybe if you can save a couple $100 and get the camera, fine. But if we're talking about the same money and I can only buy one, I would always buy the flasher first.
For sure. I agree with that statement.
Very good. Well, I think we covered most things, and I hope this helps some people get started and get out on the ice. And we hope that listen to our podcast. You'll get a lot of good information, get you down the path of catching more fish on the ice. For Al Escobedo, I'm Chris Larson. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.